I never thought I'd get to this point, contemplating something that felt so wildly out of character for me. But when you've been living in a relationship where silence weighs heavier than words, and every touch feels like an obligation, something inside you starts to fracture. I loved my partner once, still do in some quiet way, but we haven't really seen each other in over a year. Conversations turned transactional, affection disappeared, and somewhere along the way, I became invisible. It wasn't until I started noticing the looks that I remembered I was still someone worth looking at. There was Eli. Charming, a little reckless, always knew how to make people laugh. We met through work, nothing serious, but his eyes always lingered a bit longer than they should have. Then there was Jordan, a friend of a friend. Polite, reserved, but there was something magnetic about their quiet confidence. And then Cam, direct, flirtatious, bold to a fault. The kind of person who could make a joke sting just enough to make it feel like flirting. I didn't plan any of it. Not consciously. But I realized each of them offered something I hadn't felt in so long. Attention, curiosity, desire. Not the tired kind that gets assumed after years together, but raw and fresh and new. I didn't ask for it. But I didn't stop it either. At first I told myself it was innocent. Felt good just to be noticed. A compliment here, a message there, a laugh that lingered a second too long. But over time those moments added up. And one night I sat on the couch with my partner just feet away, and I felt lonelier than I had ever felt in my life. That night I thought about the three of them. Separately. Together. What they'd say. What they'd do. I was nervous, but I sent a message to each. Straightforward, no games. I asked them if they would do something with me, something bold, unexpected, and very, very wrong. I didn't spell it out completely, but they knew. I could feel it through the screen. There was a pause from all three. And then, almost like clockwork, responses rolled in. First curiosity. Then humor. I couldn't believe it. They all said yes. I sat there staring at the messages, heart racing, half hoping I'd feel shame. But it didn't come. Not yet. All I felt was adrenaline and the terrifying awareness that I had just stepped over a line I couldn't uncross. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew I'd asked for it. And I was thrilled. I didn't expect all three of them to actually say yes. Part of me thought someone would back out, or that the idea would collapse under its own absurdity. But no, each of them responded with curiosity, then intrigue, and finally commitment. There wasn't hesitation, just this strange shared energy, like we were all crossing into something dangerous on purpose. And I leaned into it more than I should have. Eli was the first to message again. His texts were bold, charged. He didn't ask for details, just said, "When?" Like we'd already agreed on everything. Jordan, more cautious, asked if I was sure. I liked that, someone still thinking with their head. But even then, I could feel their interest pulsing beneath the question. Cam didn't bother with pleasantries. Just sent back one line. Say the word. In those few days, everything felt different. I walked differently. I spoke with a sharper edge. At home, my partner still didn't notice. They were lost in their own world, work, whatever. We still shared space but not connection. And while they stared at their phone across the dinner table, I was texting people who actually made me feel alive. I spoke to each of them separately. Eli was teasing and eager, always pushing just a little more, like testing limits. Jordan wanted to understand me, like this was more than just impulse. Cam was blunt, making jokes that were too honest and too accurate. I should have felt torn. I should have felt disgusted. But I didn't. I felt wanted. Genuinely, hungrily wanted. And when you've gone long enough feeling invisible, that kind of attention is intoxicating. The day we picked was random, but once set, it became all I could think about. I rehearsed excuses in my head for my partner, but I didn't need them. They didn't ask where I was going. Didn't care enough to wonder. That silence became its own kind of permission. If they didn't care where I was, why should I feel bad about where I was going? There was no plan beyond just doing it. No strategy, no structure. But the lack of control, the chaos of it, was part of the draw. I wasn't looking for love or commitment. I just wanted to feel something real. Something sharp. Something that reminded me I still existed in ways that weren't tied to who I used to be in this relationship. The night before, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was bravery or complete self-destruction. But no matter how I tried to justify or condemn it, the one thing I couldn't deny was the pull. I didn't feel afraid. Felt awake. I had created this, chosen it, invited it, and all three had said yes. The hours ticked down, and I didn't back out. I didn't cancel. I didn't lie to myself. I wanted this, every complicated, messed up second of it. And they were coming. It started faster than I expected, like no one wanted to hesitate in case the moment disappeared. There wasn't awkwardness, no second-guessing, just silent understanding. Each of them brought something different to the space. Eli with his fire, Cam with their sharpness, Jordan with that quiet, grounding energy. I didn't compare them. I let myself experience each of them fully, moment to moment. And for the first time in years, I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't trying to control the narrative. I just let go. There was no room for guilt, not then. I felt every touch like it was the first in years. Everything was amplified. Every glance, every inhale, every heartbeat echoed louder than anything I'd felt at home in months. They didn't compete with each other. It wasn't about performance. It was about presence. For those few hours, I was the center of something I had built from scratch. I had asked for this, and they delivered. Not just physically, but in the way they saw me. Every part of me. Every version of me I thought I had lost. I didn't feel like I was cheating. I felt like I was reclaiming something. Agency, value, intensity. Not a single second of it felt meaningless. I didn't think of my partner once. Not because I didn't care, but because this part of me had been buried so deep for so long that it took complete immersion to even find it again. And once I did, I didn't want to come back up for air. I noticed things I didn't expect. How I responded differently to each of them. How I shifted with each interaction, adapting naturally but still remaining fully myself. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't trying to be liked. I was just being. And that freedom was more addictive than anything else. I didn't want it to end, not because of the physicality, but because I didn't know when I'd feel that alive again. The intensity wasn't just in the moment. It was in how it made everything else feel suddenly dull by comparison. The high wasn't about being desired. It was about finally, fully stepping into something that was mine. Afterward, there was a strange stillness. No one said anything profound. No declarations. Just a shared awareness that something had happened. Something real, even if it wasn't meant to last. I laid there for a while, not moving, heart still racing. I didn't feel regret. Not yet. What I felt was presence. Total, undeniable presence. I don't know if they felt the same. I didn't ask. That night wasn't about their stories. It was about mine. I didn't feel broken anymore. Felt raw. And for a few hours that was enough. The next morning didn't hit like a crash. It settled slowly, like fog creeping in through a cracked window. I didn't feel panic or shame. I just felt quiet. My phone was full of unread messages, not just from them, but from my partner too. Random, everyday questions as if nothing had changed. And in some ways nothing had. The world didn't explode. There was no dramatic fallout. Just me, carrying something no one else could see. Cam was the first to text again. No small talk, just a simple line. "You good?" Eli followed later. His message casual but laced with curiosity. Probably wondering if this was going to become a thing. Jordan didn't say anything that day. I wasn't surprised. Out of the three, I figured Jordan would be the one to pull back. Still, the silence from each of them said something different. There was no shared narrative now. Just fragments I had to hold separately. Home, everything felt off. My partner looked at me the same way they always did, like I was background noise. That indifference stung more than it ever had before. I watched them move around the house like nothing had shifted, while I stood there feeling like a version of myself they'd never even met. I wanted to scream or confess, or maybe just ask if they'd even notice if I was gone. But I didn't. I said nothing. Felt pointless. The three of them lingered in my head differently. Cam's confidence had left a mark, Eli's energy was still buzzing under my skin, and Jordan's absence echoed louder than their presence ever did. I didn't expect anything long-term, but I also hadn't prepared for how quickly things would fade back to normal, or how much I'd resent normal once I tasted something else. I kept replaying moments, not the obvious ones but the quiet flashes, the parts that made me feel chosen, seen, important. Those stayed with me, lodged somewhere deep, reminding me that I didn't imagine it, that it wasn't just some reckless blur. It mattered even if it was temporary. And maybe that was the hardest part to accept. Days passed. One by one the messages slowed. Cam moved on, Eli made jokes that hinted but never followed through, and Jordan eventually messaged something vague, like trying to erase what had happened without saying it outright. I didn't push. I let it all drift. Holding on would have made it messier. The damage, if there was any, was already done. I don't regret it. Probably should. But I don't. What I regret is how long I waited to realize I was starving. That I was waiting for someone else to fix what I already knew was broken. I don't know what happens next. I haven't told my partner. I don't know if I will. But every time I look at them and they look through me, I think, I asked all three of them to do it. And they did. But I'm the one who has to live with what that really means.